The third and the final leg of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Europe tour. He's about to land in Paris in about half an hour from now, and this is extremely significant. The President of France, Emmanuel Macron, he's just won a second term, and the first world leader he meets is Prime Minister Narendra Modi. So do we see more Rafales, and this time for the Indian Navy, on the cards, more defense deals, discussion on Ukraine, what else? We'll discuss that on the broadcast. I'm Gaurav Sawant, but first we take a look at our top stories.
Prime Minister Modi's final stop in Europe whirlwind. First world leader hosted by Macron after re-election. Defense, trade and Ukraine war on agenda. Big boost to Indo-French ties. France fighters and friendship. Bonjour Modi and Macron.
Two very powerful democracies, two very powerful leaders. Will they have a role to play in finding a solution to the situation in Ukraine? We'll talk about that. But closer home, what's happening in Bengal? We'll also talk about senior Congress leader and former Union Finance Minister, former Union Home Minister P. Chidambaram, heckled by Congress party, or at least lawyers considered close to the Congress party in Bengal. What's that story all about? We'll tell you all about that. But first, as always, the headlines. Maharashtra Navnirman Sena Chief Raj Thackeray pumps up the volume on Maha loudspeaker debate, dares Uddhav Thackeray to take action against loudspeakers at mosques, reminds the Shiv Sena of Bala Saheb Thakray's ideology. The Shiv Sena hits back. Navneet Rana and her husband Ravi Rana granted bail in the Hanuman Chalisa sedition case, but trouble far from over for the two. BMC team inspects their residence over alleged illegal construction. The couple are yet to walk out of jail. Jodhpur remains tense after Eid clash. Reports say Rajasthan government allegedly ignored intelligence alert on the 2nd of May about possible trouble. BJP guns for Chief Minister Gehlot. The Reserve Bank of India hikes repo rate by 40 basis points to 4.4%. Loan EMI set to go up for borrowers. Sensex down by more than 1,000 points. Pope Francis slams NATO over Russia-Ukraine conflict, says NATO barking on Russia's doorstep paved the way for conflict. And we start Newstrack with dramatic images of the confrontation between lawyers in Bengal and former Union Finance Minister and senior Congress leader P. Chidambaram in Kolkata. This showdown took place in front of the Calcutta High Court. The reason? P. Chidambaram was representing the Bengal government, the Trinamool government, in a case that was filed by senior Congress leader and Congress MP in Lok Sabha. It's Bengal Unit President Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary. Mamta Banerjee, sued by Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary, being defended by P. Chidambaram in the Metro Dairy share sale case. The pro-Congress lawyers stopped Chidambaram's car, surrounded him, chanted "Go back" slogans, but that is not all that they chanted. They called Chidambaram an agent of the Trinamool Congress and much more. Listen in.
You go back! You go back! That the party is suffering in West Bengal. It is just because of leaders like you. It's just because of the leaders like you. You are a member of the National Congress. Yes, absolutely. Mr. Chidambaram, we speak on you. You should go back. This is something which has not been done by you. The man was filed by the VCC President. And this is something which has not been done by you. The man was filed by the VCC President. Mr. Chidambaram, you go back. You go back. That the party is suffering in West Bengal. It is just because of leaders like you. It's just because of all leaders like you. You are a member of the International Congress. Yes, absolutely. Mr. Chidambaram, we speak on you. You should go back. This is something which has not been done by you. The man was filed by the VCC president. And this is something which has not been done by you. The man was filed by the VCC president. Mr. Chidambaram, you go back. You go back. That the party is suffering in West Bengal. It is just because of leaders like you. It's just because of all leaders like you. You are a member of the International Congress. Yes, absolutely. Mr. Chidambaram, we speak on you. You should go back. This is something which has not been done by you. The man was filed by the VCC president. And this is something which has
Mr. P. Chidambaram, ace lawyer, former Finance Minister of India, former Union Home Minister of India. Here, he was defending the Bengal government in the Keventers Metro Dairy case. And these are lawyers who are saying that because of you, the Congress is suffering. This is a case where Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary, against the senior Congress leader and Member of Parliament, Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary, the Bengal unit chief, he's accused the Mamata Banerjee government or the Trinamool Congress in Bengal of misappropriation of funds. And lawyers here accuse Mr. Chidambaram of trying to save Mamata Banerjee. I have Sanjay Jha, formerly with the Congress, joining me on the broadcast. He's an analyst. And Sanjay Jha, help us understand. So there is Mr. Chidambaram, the lawyer, and there is Mr. Chidambaram, who's a very senior Congress leader. Are these lawyers making the mistake of not distinguishing between the two, or somewhere down the line, for the sake of the Congress party, should Mr. Chidambaram have drawn a line?
Gaurav, before I answer your question, I need to first tell you, because we haven't spoken for a long time, that you did an outstanding job when you were covering Ukraine. So a brilliant job. I think you were fantastic. Moving on to your question, I do believe that, politicians do wear several hats. And while I understand the compulsions on Mr. Chaudhary to kind of attack the Mamata Banerjee government because the Congress has been wiped off and he has to do something to resurrect the Congress, and that is understandable from his point of view, it will be a little unfair to target Mr. Chidambaram, because he also happens to be an eminent lawyer. And, he has to take briefs that he believes is, consistent with whatever are his professional, standing. And sometimes, you might come in conflict with what your political institution stands for. Although I wish in this case that, because of the fact that one has to recognize that the Congress is at the moment, frankly speaking, non-existent in West Bengal, it is imperative that, there is a conversation between senior leaders. Mr. Chidambaram has been a former finance minister. Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary happens to be the chief spokesperson of the party in the Lok Sabha.
Yes.
So this doesn't make the Congress look good at all. I think from the perception standpoint, you're absolutely right. This is embarrassing, because somebody will say the Congress talks with a forked tongue. And, while you and I may be able to understand that Mr. Chidambaram can also be a lawyer, the fact of the matter is that, in the general perception of the people, they will say the Congress is actually a very confused party in contradiction with itself.
Because someone may say that the right hand does not know what the left is doing, and as that lady lawyer was saying, that here Congress workers are struggling. They're struggling to revive the party, or words to that effect. And here Mr. Chidambaram is saving the Trinamool Congress that Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary is accused of misappropriation of crores of funds in the Metro Dairy case. So should the lawyer in Mr. Chidambaram have pulled back for the political leader in Mr. Chidambaram, or are these lawyers wrong in targeting him?
Gaurav, in my personal view, because I also wear a couple of hats, okay, and I do believe that, as long as you believe that you're principally not doing anything that will damage the party's prospects, I think you have your professional independence and your fundamental right to do what you want to do. Mr. Chidambaram is not canvassing for the TMC. He's not campaigning for any party. He's taking a stance on an issue where he believes he has a compelling argument, which as a lawyer he would like to win. On the other hand, don't forget that our colleague Abhishek Manu Singhvi is a Raj Sabha member, and he's from Bengal. So, there are these, and this is also the case with the BJP. Some of the lawyers from the BJP have contested for corporates that necessarily the party hasn't been in favor of in the past. So I think these are little grey areas. But I do hope that the West Bengal Congress focuses, instead of focusing on Mr. Chidambaram and trying to attack him because that will get you a lot of media coverage, I think they should go back to the grassroots and build the Congress back from bottom up.
Okay. Stay with me, Sanjay Jha. I also want to bring in my colleague Preeti Chaudhary, who's been tracking this story. Preeti, have you been able to get a reaction from the Congress party on this, especially at a time when the Congress party is trying to revive itself in Bengal? And here you have Mr. P. Chidambaram being accused of defending the Trinamool Congress government, being accused by Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary of massive corruption in the Metro Dairy case.
Well, there is no reaction coming in from the Congress on this, Gaurav, and understandably so, because the Congress has always maintained, and so has, even if you look at the Bharatiya Janata Party, where the lawyers in Congress, if you hark back in history, if you look at Salman Khurshid, you look at Kapil Sibal, you look at Abhishek Manu Singhvi, they've always taken cases which sometimes contradict the grain or the ideology of the Congress. They've even fought for leaders from the Bharatiya Janata Party, which was at one point their primary opponent when they were in power. So the Congress, they're not getting any statement, but understandably so. However, one needs to point out the dichotomy in all of this, because let's just go back to what went down with the entire Prashant Kishore fiasco, because one of the main reasons internally is what is being said, that some of the leaders had an issue with possibly that, Prashant Kishore was attached to IPAC. IPAC had, tie-ups with the TMC in West Bengal, a very similar case like this, tie-ups with YSRCP, with TRS in Telangana. And that was one of the main reasons that how could Prashant Kishore, who actually doesn't have any stake in the IPAC anymore, moonlight with, the opponents of the Congress and still be a part of the Congress. There was an ideological default there, is what many leaders had said at that point of time. But, if you look at it, this is not very far from that, because at the same time here, you have Mr. P. Chidambaram, who technically, because he is a lawyer, is fighting a case for the TMC. In a state where Congress was the primary opposition to the TMC at one point of time, before the Bharatiya Janata Party came in West Bengal. So the situation is not very, very different than what happened. So many would suggest this is hypocrisy as well, because where Prashant Kishore's case was concerned, he really had no stake in IPAC. Okay. And, what would he disassociate himself of? But here, you have the tallest leaders who are part of the core group there at that point of time, defending a political party in a state where they were at one point of time the primary opposition. So, a lot of thinking that the Congress might have to do. It's not the old times, like it was earlier, where
because this is all out in the open.
Lawyers could actually hold, could defend people from opposite parties, and it's happened both ways. We've seen Mr. Arun Jaitley take cases for the Congress leaders as well in the past. Okay,
stay with me for a moment, and before I bring in Sanjay Jha once again, let's listen in to what actually transpired on ground, with lawyers going to the extent of calling an eminent lawyer and former Finance Minister of India TMC ka dalal, or words to that effect. Let's listen in.
This is something which has not been done by you. The man was filed by the VCC president. And this is something which has not been done by you. The man was filed by the VCC president. Mr. Chidambaram, you go back. You go back. That the party is suffering in West Bengal. It is just because of leaders like you. It's just because of the leaders like you. You are a member of the International Congress. Yes, absolutely. Mr. Chidambaram, we speak on you. You should go back.
Sanjay Jha, according to, those close to Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary or the Bengal Congress, this could have been a golden opportunity for the Congress party to show or expose, as the Congress puts it, corruption in the Bengal government. This could have been a golden opportunity. But should Mr. Chidambaram win this case against Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary, it's advantage TMC, and either ways disadvantage Congress.
Well, Gaurav, let me tell you, if Mr. Chaudhary and the Congress, and I'm not trying to hold any counsel from Mr. Chidambaram here, I just want to say this up front. If Mr. Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary and the Bengal Congress believe that this is the only defining way by which the Congress is going to come back in Bengal, clearly they are living in a fool's paradise, right? You need to go down to the grassroots level, find out where the organization is vanished, why are we down to 0 seats, what are the kind of issues that concern the common people of Bengal, right on from violence down to agrarian distress, price rises, the local lack of industry, lack of jobs. So I think the Congress has to go back to the fundamental politics that it understands. But, to merely try and explain as if this issue alone is going to damage the Congress's prospects in the future is, I think, being disingenuous. Okay. Maybe there is some kind of a visibility that this entire campaign gives the Congress party there. But the truth is, Mr. Chidambaram is fighting this case. This case is not the only issue that Bengal is confronted with. To take on Mamata Banerjee or the BJP, I think the Congress should focus on the BJP as well. I mean, it's going to take a lot of hard ground work, and I think the Congress here is missing the woods for the trees.
Okay, and this fratricide then you're saying will get them nowhere. But for joining me here, Sanjay Jha and Preeti Chaudhary, many thanks. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi is about to land in Paris shortly. This is the third and the final leg of his three-country tour to Europe. He's expected to land in about less than half an hour from now. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be the first world leader to be hosted by the President of France, Emmanuel Macron, after his recent re-election. What's on the cards? Defense deals, and there could be forward movement and talk on Rafale marine fighters for the Indian Navy, trade deals, and of course, extremely important, the Ukraine conflict, very high on the agenda. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to France is being seen as a huge boost to India-France relationship being taken to the next level.
In a few hours from now, the newly re-elected French president will conduct his first in-the-flesh meeting with a world leader. And that leader is Emmanuel Macron's friend, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Modi's arrival in Paris will mark a lightning-quick showstopper to a whirlwind Europe tour. But the air of Paris is thick with substance for one of India's most important relationships in the continent. At the Champs-Élysées, the two leaders will talk extensively about the Ukraine war, with Modi already making clear during this visit India's clear stand.
यूक्रेन के संकट के आरंभ से ही हमने तुरंत युद्ध विराम का आह्वान किया और इस बात पर जोर दिया था कि विवाद को सुलझाने के लिए बातचीत ही एकमात्र उपाय है.
But beyond the deep diplomatic engagement, there's plenty of the tangible on the Indo-French table. The Indian Air Force, remember, has received 35 of 36 French-built Rafale jets and has been operating them extensively from two bases in India's north and east. France is now pushing hard for India to sign on for even more Rafale fighters, including a made-in-India version. With the Indian Air Force in the market for 114 new multi-role fighter aircraft and the Indian Navy hunting for 57 new-generation carrier-based fighters, Macron's France believes it is in the best possible position to win both deals, considering the Rafale is already operational in Indian service. Apart from fully built military aircraft, one of the most crucial and substantive Indo-French projects in the offing is a partnership to build a powerful new jet engine to power India's future combat aircraft. The Indian Ministry of Defence is said to have urged its teams to tie up all loose ends and get this project going as quickly as possible. However, things are less hopeful on the submarine side of things, with France, maker of India's Scorpion-class submarines, pulling out of India's projected Project 75I submarine building program, which envisages local construction of 6 new-generation submarines. Ties between India and France go way beyond military trade and cooperation, but as with India's major relationships, defense cooperation is a major sweetener and enabler of bigger things. While Modi's brief stopover in Paris today isn't long enough for deal-making, it is visits like these that clear the proverbial decks for the big deals. Whether those deals happen, especially with France going up against contenders from a powerful United States, remains to be seen. With Anjana Om Kashyap in Paris, Bureau Report, India Today.
And news coming in, France has upgraded 4 naval versions of the Rafale fighter jets, Rafale Marines, to the latest standard and is planning to offer them to the Indian Navy for extensive trials for the new INS Vikrant aircraft carrier that gets commissioned next year. Now this is intended to give France an edge, an advantage over the United States, which has offered the FA-18 Super Hornet fighter jets. Overall, the requirement of the Indian Navy is for 57 jets. So France feels that if it quickly offers these 4 jets, it will basically perhaps score a big win with the Indian Navy. I quickly want to cut across to India Today's executive editor Shiv Arur for more on this. Shiv, the 36 Rafales, 35 already in, but that's for the Indian Air Force. Tell us more about these 4 Rafale Marines that have been upgraded by France. What do they look like? What's the new configuration? And what does it mean for the Indian Navy?
You know, this is a very, very smart move that appears to be in the offing from the French side, Gaurav. The Indian Navy is looking for 57 new generation fighters that it can operate off its current and future aircraft carriers, including the indigenous INS Vikrant that enters service with the Indian Navy next year. 57 aircraft is a large number, as you know, and the Rafale goes up against the US Super Hornet, the F-18 Super Hornet, and it's going to be a very competitive process. They are currently being tested in Goa as well, but France believes that it needs to leverage the fact that Rafales are already in service with the Indian Air Force. But even then, given the huge diplomatic might that the United States has, France doesn't want to leave anything to chance, clearly, and that's the reason why in the French media there are these reports appearing that the Macron government has actually ordered for 4 existing French Navy Rafales to be upgraded to the latest configuration and standard for weapons, for equipment, for avionics, etc., and then offer them to the Indian Navy just as is, so they can operate as quickly as the INS Vikrant aircraft carrier enters service, as a kind of strategic placeholder, because the Indian Navy gets a taste of these Rafales immediately after the aircraft carrier joins service, it might actually bring the contest to a early conclusion. That's what the French are hoping, but as we both know, Gaurav, these things have stretched on for many, many years in the past. So France may be betting big, but it is a smart move. Let's see how it goes.
Okay, so for the MMRCA, it took decades and decades of planning and then ultimate conclusion with the Rafales. The 36th is likely to come in, but as far as these naval versions are concerned, compare the two, the FA-18 Super Hornets and the Rafales. As far as the Indian Navy's requirements are concerned, how do the two match up, especially given the requirements of the Indian Navy on board INS Vikrant?
Gaurav, both the Rafale and the F-18 are similar in many respects. They are the only 2 fighter aircraft that operate off nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, at this point of time. They're the only aircraft, only fighter aircraft that are in this contest, because even though they are built for, catapult launches off carriers that you and I have both visited of the US Navy, both these aircraft have actually demonstrated to the Indian Navy that they're capable of operating off ski jumps, which is the launch feature on Indian aircraft carriers. Even though they're comparable in many respects, both sides will, of course, amplify and focus on the strengths that they have. For instance, the American Super Hornet will flaunt the capability of carrying at least 4 anti-ship missiles, whereas on the other hand, the Rafale can only carry 1. Similarly, in terms of range and other kinds of weapon systems, the Rafale weighs favorably in favor against the Super Hornet. So there are many, many different aspects, but these are both highly advanced 4+ generation fighter aircraft that are already in service. Both have seen combat. Both have seen operational scenarios, including current operation scenarios, in West Asia. So it's going to be interesting to see how it actually turns out. But as you and I both know, Gaurav, in India, it rarely comes down to the technical capabilities of aircraft. That's always a foregone conclusion. Ultimately, it's about the political backing, the political baggage that comes with a defense deal that matters in the end.
And we'll be tracking that story very, very closely. Shiv, for the moment, many thanks for joining me. Now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, on his overseas trips, always tries to make it a point to interact with the Indian diaspora. His connect with the youngest of the young, the children, that is what has got a lot of attention, especially this time. Candid moments of Prime Minister Narendra Modi talking to young children, appreciating them, engaging with them. These are the images that have gone viral. And here's a look at some of these really heartwarming images of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's 3-day visit to 3 different countries. He was in Berlin, he was in Copenhagen, and he's about to land in Paris in just about 20 minutes from now.
A new resurgent India shining in all its glory. The diaspora, diverse, decadent and united by their love for India.
दुनिया का सबसे बेस्ट प्राइम मिनिस्टर है, ऐसा लीडर दुनिया में कहीं भी नहीं है और मेरा हिसाब से कोई आएगा भी नहीं है। मुझे इतना उम्मीद है मोदी जी से और ये मेरे को इतना भरोसा है, इंडिया को वर्ल्ड में नंबर 1 मोदी जी ही करा के रखेंगे और कोई रास्ता ही नहीं है।
It was amazing. Thank you so much मोदी जी यहाँ आने के लिए and we are really proud to be Indian. हम कहीं भी रहे, जैसे कि आपने कहा, चारों और हर जगह इंडियंस है। Thank you so much. भारत माता की जय।
उन्होंने हमारे देश का नाम विदेश में भी बहुत ऊंचा किया है और मुझे लगता है कि हम लोग बहुत गर्व महसूस करते हैं कि हम उस देश से आते हैं कि प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी हैं।
इतना गर्व कभी पहले महसूस नहीं होता था जितना अब हो रहा है। हम लोग 18 साल से हैं हम यहाँ पे, लेकिन जो फीलिंग अभी आती है मोदी जी जब से सरकार में है, पहले नहीं था।
मतलब इट्स अ ड्रीम कम ट्रू टू सी मोदी इन पर्सन, मीट हिम।
ही इज वेरी इंस्पिरेशनल एंड मुझे इतने सब सुन के yes I was like amazed कि इतना सब हुआ है इंडिया में literally.
Wherever the Prime Minister goes, Indian expats welcome him with open arms. But it is the children who attract the Prime Minister's attention the most. On his way to meetings with world leaders or crucial diplomatic events, Prime Minister always stops to interact with his youngest fans. This image is from Berlin, Germany, where kids too came out to catch a glimpse of the Prime Minister. As the diaspora cheered for Narendra Modi, he entered, looked at a child who was being cradled in his mother's arms and went straight for him. He asked his name, but the child shied away. But the Prime Minister continued to play with the kid. He patted the child and then carried on. The Prime Minister makes it a point to interact with the future of India. The children wait for him, make presents for him, like this little girl who gifted a portrait of the Prime Minister. The message on the painting read, "Dear Prime Minister, welcome to Berlin." Narendra Modi took his time to appreciate the portrait and then asked a bystander to click his picture with the little girl.
क्या बनाया तुमने? अच्छा, क्या बनाया? कितना टाइम लगा?
The girl who presented the Prime Minister with his portrait is Manya Mishra.
कैसा रहा आपका एनकाउंटर आज तक पे? आपको पूरे देश में लोग देख रहे हैं इस वक्त आज तक पे, क्या बोलेंगे आप?
मैं बोलूंगी कि मेरे को आज बहुत अच्छा लग रहा है क्योंकि मैं प्राइम मिनिस्टर से मिली, मोदी जी से, और मैंने जब उनको ये पेंटिंग दिखाई उन्होंने बोला शाबाश, और उन्होंने मेरे को ये सिग्नेचर दिया अपना, और उन्होंने अपने सिग्नेचर के ऊपर वंदे मातरम भी लिखा है, इसलिए मैं बहुत खुश हूँ।
आपको तो वंदे मातरम भी लिखा हुआ मिला है, वंदे मातरम नरेंद्र मोदी ऑटोग्राफ मिला।
हाँ, और मैंने उन्हें बोला कि यू आर माई आइकॉन, और मैं बहुत खुश हूँ कि आई एम प्राउड कि वो हमारे देश के प्रधानमंत्री मोदी जी हैं।
आपने बोला यू आर एन आइकॉन?
यस।
और उनका क्या रिस्पॉन्स था?
लाइक He did like this.
So how are you feeling? अब आपके लिए कैसी खुशी है?
It was like my dream came true.
ये आपने खुद से बनाई है ना? तो ये कितने दिन में बनाई?
One day.
एक दिन में? मान्या मिश्रा, जय हिंद लिखा आपने, हाँ?
Yes.
और फिर बना के और आज सीएम को दिखा दिया, तो मतलब जो काम जहाँ पहुँचना था वो हो गया?
Yes. Yes.
अब फीलिंग रिलीव्ड? अभी भी धड़कन तेज है?
Yes.
धड़कन तेज है, excited?
Yes.
So Manya is happy now?
Yes.
Since 2014, Prime Minister makes it a point to connect with the diaspora during his trips abroad, and children are very much part of his outreach. In Berlin, a boy even sang a patriotic song for the Prime Minister.
हे जन्मभूमि भारत, हे कर्मभूमि भारत, हे वंदनीय भारत, अभिनंदनीय भारत, जीवन सुमन चढ़ाकर आराधना करेंगे।
यदा यदा हि धर्मस्य ग्लानिर्भवति भारत, अभ्युत्थानम् अधर्मस्य सदात्मानं सृजाम्यहम्.
The Connect with Kids continued in Copenhagen, Denmark. These heartwarming images are now super viral, garnering millions of likes and views. Bureau Report, India Today.
Day 70 of the Ukraine-Russia conflict, and Ukraine has unleashed its killer drones in the skies, and these are drones with the difference. There's a new video which has been uploaded by Ukraine's Interior Ministry, by the minister himself. It shows relatively smaller drones being used to target the Russian armed forces, especially their military convoys, and these drones are capable of hitting targets, as you will see in these images, with pinpoint accuracy. Take a look.
For over 2 months now, drones have done untold damage in the Russia-Ukraine battlefield. From smashing tanks, to destroying artillery, to even bombing patrol boats on the Black Sea. Drones armed with laser-guided missiles and suicide drones, where the drone itself is the missile, have defined a high-technology battlefield where few targets are beyond reach. And now, a newly revealed chapter of this escalating drone war in Ukraine. What you're about to watch is a piece of footage capturing the use of small drones and applied to cause devastating pinpointed damage. Watch now closely as this drone quietly films from the air as a group of Russian troops mobilize on an unspecified dirt road in Ukraine. Swooping up over them, the drone quietly drops an improvised grenade on the unsuspecting troops, injuring some and sending the rest running. In an eerie moment, the drone stops and zooms in on the injured soldiers. The drone lies in wait and then slowly moves to observe the Russian troops, including one of the injured men, getting into a pickup truck. With the target just sitting there, the drone then deploys a second grenade, sending it straight down through the sunroof of the vehicle. A precision strike smashing into the truck and exploding, sending the vehicle careening, the injuries to the men captured in zoom mode. What you've just witnessed is footage tweeted out by Ukraine's Interior Affairs Minister of what is possibly the lowest cost airstrike in existence. A method that's been used in the past by ISIS in Iraq and Syria, a method that's being tested by US Marines, and now using a definite degree of hardware improvisation deployed to devastating micro effect by Ukraine against Russian troops. What Ukraine has demonstrated is the use of drones across the damage spectrum over 2 months. From the use of drones to distract and then facilitate the sinking of Russia's biggest ship in the Black Sea, to the bombing of fast-moving boats, to devastating tanks and armor, to now even picking out individual groups of troops. The gap for escape is rapidly closing and at nearly no cost. Bureau Report, India Today.
And I want to bring in India Today's editor defense Abhishek Bhalla for more on this. Abhishek, these drones, first in the Azerbaijan-Armenia war, a major game changer for Azerbaijan, and now in the Ukraine-Russia war, truly a game changer, a Brahmastra of sorts for Ukraine. Russia has nothing to counter these weapons on ground, it seems.
Well, Gaurav, this is just a glimpse of where this war is headed now, because, you know, until now, Ukraine had used some very sophisticated drones, but the latest video, it seems that these are basic elementary drones that can be picked up from anywhere, and these are suicide drones, where, you know, the drone itself can go and bomb any target that they fix onto, and, you know, especially in the eastern part where the war is really fierce, the terrain is such, those are vast tract lands, flat lands, and that's where the Russian mobilization is happening in a big manner. And if these drones are going to be used there, then obviously it can cause a lot of damage to the Russian forces. We've already seen how these drones were effectively used. Those were sophisticated drones were used against Russian armor. That's when you were here as well. And if Ukraine is going to continue with this tactic, and if they are going to be supplied with more drones from their Western partners, then it's going to be a very lethal, potent weapon for the Ukrainian forces against the advancement of the Russian forces.
And look at the number of drones that they're operating now. So they have the Bayraktars, the Turkish drones, they have the Switchblades, they have commercially available drones that they're rigging to either be kamikaze drones or just drop grenades on troop convoys. This will actually cause havoc as far as the Russian advance is concerned, Abhishek.
Definitely, Gaurav, and you know that is a matter of big concern for the Russian forces, because they are still trying to make an advancement in the entire Donbas region. There has been a fierce battle raging, especially in the Donbas region. I was at the border of the Donbas region a couple of days back, entire Kharkiv region. That's where the Russians are trying to cut off the supply lines for the Ukrainian forces that are still holding on to their positions in some of the key locations in the Donbas region. And if they are not successful in cutting off these supply lines, then the Ukrainian forces on the ground, backed by such drones, can be a very stiff target for the Russians as well.
Especially now when they're getting more disruptive technology. For joining me here, Abhishek, many thanks and stay safe, my friend. So this isn't the first time that Ukraine has used drones to hit hard the advancing Russian forces. Earlier, Ukraine had claimed that destroyed 2 Russian Raptor boats in the Black Sea using drones. Raptor boats, incidentally, are equipped with machine guns. They can carry up to 20 sailors. They're fast-moving boats. This, again, was a big hit claimed by Ukraine, especially after destroying the Moskva, the flagship of the Russian Black Sea fleet.
An armed Russian boat prowling the Black Sea off the southern coast of Ukraine. The boat has no idea it has been spotted from the skies. And then this happens. In the blink of an eye, the 55-foot Russian patrol boat obliterated over the waves. Minutes later, a second boat is seen speeding away, but it's too late. This boat too has no escape, because it's been struck from the skies by a relentless bombing machine. The Ukrainian government claims that these are images of 2 Russian Raptor-class high-speed coastal patrol boats, bombed into oblivion courtesy laser-guided bombs delivered by Ukrainian Bayraktar TB2 drones. The strikes on these 2 boats is enormously significant. They capture the first time in this war that these drones have actively engaged and destroyed Russian naval assets.
In over 2 months of the war, Ukrainian combat drones have got a lot of success by hitting their targets. But now, for the first time, they have achieved this success over an open ocean. Now, there are reports that Ukrainian combat drones have successfully hit Russian boats in the Black Sea.
The laser-guided munitions used in this new over-ocean attack are likely the Russian MAM, a smart micro-munition designed to hit both stationary and moving targets with devastating accuracy. The destruction of the 2 Russian Navy patrol boats will be a painful sting for Putin's war machine, coming 18 days after the sinking of the Black Sea Fleet's flagship cruiser Moskva, an incident that is still sending shockwaves around the world for what it means to Ukraine's defense capabilities. The 2 boats struck in this manner may be much smaller than the Moskva, but the signal from Ukraine is clear. No matter how small the Russian asset and no matter where it's operating, with the help of American and Western intelligence, electronics and targeting sensors, nothing will be out of reach for Ukrainian weapons. Bureau Report, India Today.
Defiant after being booked, Raj Thackeray of the Maharashtra Navnirman Sena came out roaring against the Azan on loudspeakers today. The MNS chief has promised to carry out his Hanuman Chalisa chanting campaign and has dared his cousin and Maharashtra Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray to take action against mosques and other religious institutions that are using loudspeakers beyond permissible limits.
Raj Thackeray bumps up the volume in the loudspeaker debate. Maharashtra Navnirman Sena workers on Wednesday morning played the Hanuman Chalisa on loudspeaker outside mosques at many places, timing it with the azan or the call for prayer. A police crackdown followed that saw many arrests and detentions. MNS chief himself was at home under the watchful eyes of the state police. While Raj Thackeray could not lead the protests against loudspeakers, he lashed out at the Shiv Sena-led government in Maharashtra, that in a hurriedly called press meeting.
1400 या 1500 कुछ मस्जिदें हैं और उसके ऊपर से 135 मस्जिदों के ऊपर सुबह 5 बजे के पहले जो सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने जो बताया वो नियम तोड़कर 135 मस्जिदों के ऊपर सुबह अजान लगाई गई लाउडस्पीकर के ऊपर। मैं पूछ रहा हूं महाराष्ट्र की पुलिस को, इन 135 मस्जिदों के ऊपर आप कौन सी कार्रवाई करने वाले हैं?
Escalating the fight against Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray, Raj invoked his uncle and Uddhav's father, Bala Saheb Thackeray. He tweeted an old video of the Shiv Sena founder, where he was declaring he will end the namaz in public places.
ज्या दिवशी माझं सरकार या महाराष्ट्रामध्ये येईल त्यावेळेला रस्त्यामधले नमाज आम्ही पडल्यात बंद केल्याशिवाय राहणार नाही. कारण धर्म असा असावा लागतो की तो राष्ट्र विकासाच्या आड येता कामा नये, लोकांना त्याचा उपद्रव होता कामा नये. आमच्या हिंदू धर्माचा कुठे जर कोणाला उपद्रव होत असेल त्यांनी मला येऊन सांगावं, आम्ही त्याचा बंदोबस्त करायला तयार आहोत. लाऊडस्पीकर मशिदीवरचे खाली येतील, बंद.
The Shiv Sena hit back with another set of Bal Thackeray videos slamming Raj Thackeray.
पूर्वी ज्या स्टाईल मध्ये बोलत होतो अशी ही स्टाईल माझी कोणीतरी उचलली म्हणतात, मला माहित नाही कोणी. म्हणजे मी माझ्या स्टाईल मध्ये जर उद्या बोललो तर मी त्यांची कॉपी करते असं म्हणणार तुम्ही कदाचित. एक विनोद आठवतो, मराठी मराठी मराठी. अरे झाल्यानं तुमचा जन्म झाला नव्हता त्यावेळेला मी मराठी काढलेली आहे महाराष्ट्रामध्ये.
The Shiv Sena, in no mood to relent, launched a fresh offensive accusing Raj Thackeray of becoming a BJP puppet.
त्यांना बाळासाहेब किती आठवतात त्याआधी पाहावं लागेल. खरे बाळासाहेब ज्यांनी बाळासाहेबांना सोडलं, त्यांनी बाळासाहेबांचा विचार सोडला. शिवसेनेच्या पाठीत ज्या भारतीय जनता पक्षानं खंजीरीत बसला, त्यांचं उपवस्त्र म्हणून जे राहत आहेत त्यांनी शिवसेनेला काय अंगीकार केलं.
The Bharatiya Janata Party, meanwhile, has thrown its weight behind its new friend, Raj Thackeray.
अगर उत्तर प्रदेश में मस्जिदों और मंदिरों से लाउड स्पीकर हटाए जा सकते हैं, उनका वॉल्यूम रेगुलेट किया जा सकता है, तो महाराष्ट्र में क्यों नहीं किया जा सकता? क्योंकि वहां की अघाड़ी सरकार तुष्टीकरण की राजनीति कर रही है. वहां पर शिवसेना को आज हनुमान चालीसा से डर लगने लगा है. बाला साहब ठाकरे की पार्टी आज हनुमान चालीसा से भाग रही है. ये बड़ा राजनीतिक मुद्दा है महाराष्ट्र में.
The battle of Thackerays could have major political ramifications, starting with the BMC elections later this year. The BJP is in a prestige fight to topple the Shiv Sena from its citadel. But can Raj Thackeray, who has so far been an election dud, make a big impact and dent the Shiv Sena votes? That remains to be seen. Bureau Report, India Today.
Well, that is all we have time for on the Newstrack this evening. Many thanks for watching.